Hello everyone and welcome back to Milo Farms. Well, we're out in the shop again today and we're doing some work on the 2002 custom Weld Viper 2. It's an inboard jet boat with a 4.3 liter V6. And last time we took it up to the lake, which was the first time for the year, it was quite cold out, so we had the heater going and we noticed it was not producing very much heat. So it looked like on the heat gauge we were only getting about 100 degrees is what the indication was, and you could come back and touch the heater hoses and things like that and they were not very warm. So I'm going to go ahead today and take a look at this thermostat, and according to the guy I talked to from Marine Power, he said that the thermostat is located right under this cover right here, and he sold me a 160 degree thermostat and said that's what it called for from the factory from Marine Power, and so we're going to go ahead and try to change that out. The issue is that if you look at this from the front, the antifreeze level's up here, and all this back here is lower than that. So as soon as we open up that cover, we're going to have antifreeze going everywhere. So what I'm going to try to do is, first of all, open the cap, and I've got an old carpet cleaner vacuum that doesn't have carpet cleaner function anymore, but works really well as a wet vac. And so we're going to suck out as much antifreeze as we can out of here, and then we're going to go back and pick one of these hoses, maybe this little one or something, and try to recover as much of this antifreeze out of here as we can until we can get it to the point that this heat exchanger is empty. We could go down here and undo one of these hoses, but I wanted to not do that if necessary, or if not necessary. The other option is go over on the side and undo one of these hoses, but I'm going to start at the top and see if I can catch as much of this antifreeze without it going everywhere. I'm going to tuck some towels up under here to try to catch everything, and if we do make a huge mess, we can always take it outside and wash it if we have to. So we're going to go ahead first with trying to suck the antifreeze out of the lid here to get it to stop going in the bottle, and then also trying to get the antifreeze out back here, and then see how that goes. So we got a bunch of the antifreeze out and didn't make too bad of a mess, but I think we're going to have to rinse some things off when we're done. I ended up taking this hose off and had to break the tip of it just a little to get it off, but I think I can just cut it off and move it over to have a fresh hose. That should be just fine. If not, that's an easy enough hose to replace right there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen these two hose clamps. I marked where this was with a Sharpie so I could see where to get it back to precisely. We're going to loosen these two hose clamps and see if we can rock this whole thing forward or take it completely out of its cradle forward, and then loosen the Allen screw here and then the Allen screw that's underneath in the same place. The underneath one's going to be pretty hard to get to. So we got the top bolt out, and now we're trying to get the lower bolt out. You can see it part way out down below, and you can kind of see the thermostat in that crack. We'll go ahead and finish loosening this and then see if we can scoot it over enough to get the thermostat out. Well, there's the issue. The thermostat's actually broken and just floating around in there by itself. There's this piece, which was, it looks like attached to the top and is snapped off. Then there's this piece, which is just floating around in there, and not sure exactly what's going on with it. And then it looks like everything else in there is pretty good. And then everything else on this side here looks pretty good as well. We're going to go ahead and clean this all up, try to get that gasket off of there. Maybe hit that with the wet dry vac and get some more antifreeze and any chunks out of there. And then we're going to wipe it all down and try to put it back together. So actually looking at this and thinking about this thermostat, before I put this back together, thinking that that arrow points towards the left, says towards radiator. This is the direction it was installed. It was actually installed backwards, which is interesting how it even worked for a time being before it fell apart, because the hot water comes up from the left side and then travels towards the right, and this part right here, where my finger is what should sense the temperature. So the thermostat was actually installed backwards, so it should be installed this way, which is how we installed the new one. So that's amazing this even worked. We were able to account for all the pieces except for this one little ring right here. And presumably the way it was installed, it's either jammed down inside of here, which I'm going to inspect when I get in the house. I'm going to put it in some hot water and see if I can get any parts to fall out of it. Or the piece went down inside the heat exchanger, hopefully. Or went down inside the bottom of the motor. But any of those places, it should be okay, just that little piece of brass, as long as it's not going through the water pump or something like that, which I think is pretty unlikely. Alright, so we got that all cleaned up, and we're going to be installing the thermostat, which is pictured here. This is the one that they sold me from Marine Power, and the gasket. Went ahead and polished this all up. Got as much of the gasket material off as I could. I've scrubbed at this top several times up here trying to get it off. I think I'm going to go hit that one more time and try to get the material off of there. I've sucked all the coolant out that I can suck out, and I'm going to put fresh in. And then over here I've also gone around the edge and cleaned out that groove where the thermostat sits. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything out and get it installed. So there's the new thermostat in place, and it's recessed down to that groove. Then the gasket's going to go against it like this, and then we'll go ahead and set it down where it goes. And then I'm going to put some anti-seize on those two bolts. It's going to be a pretty fun time getting the bottom bolt in, as you can't really get to it. Alright, we finally got that closed back up again, and you can see the gasket is in there. The thermostat's back in, and we put the spring on the thermostat facing towards where the hot water would come. So the hot water is going to come from where the original thermostat would be. It's going to go out these pipes this way and this way. It's going to go down into the bottom of the water manifolds here. It's going to come back out the top of the water manifolds here into this junction box. This is going to the heater, and then this is a return back to right here. This is a return back to the water pump to warm the thermostat up before it opens. So if the thermostat never opens because the engine's still cold, this little pipe will return water back to the water pump, and it'll also let bubbles out and that sort of thing. Then when the thermostat opens, the water comes through here, goes through the heat exchanger, which on the outside has water, lake water, and on the inside has antifreeze. Then it will come back down here, cold, and go back in the engine. The cold water from the heater also comes through here and joins here. Then this all goes back into the engine right here and recirculates. Then the lake water is coming up here into the exchanger, cools the exchanger, and then goes out through the pipe here and the pipe here, and then is shot out with the exhaust. So once you figure out how it's all laid out, it's pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about this much of that pipe and reinstall it back on there like that. Then we should be good to go. We'll go ahead and tighten back up the exchanger here and here where I made the marks, and everything should be good. It says you don't have to do anything to bleed the antifreeze on this engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up with antifreeze today and get as many bubbles out in the shop as I can. And since this is an American turbine pump, you can't run it out of water because of that seal that's in it. So what we want to do is fill this all the way up today. Then when we get up to the lake, we'll get tied up to the dock. We'll start the engine with the radiator cap off, and we'll bring it up to operating temperature and keep adding antifreeze until all the bubbles are clear. And then once all the bubbles are clear, we'll put the cap back on and then make sure the overflow tank's full as well. So that pretty much wraps it up. Hope everybody enjoyed the video. Remember, you can't finish a project without getting started.